Hi all and welcome to the Truth, Honour and Integrity show. My name's Thomas Williams. A fairly packed show tonight. I'm going to repeat the intel from Sunday for some that didn't hear it. There is other bits of intel and there's other bits of news here and there that's some bit good and some obviously not so good, as we're finding out more and more. There's no long op-ed pieces tonight because there's just that much different news items or pieces that I need to put in and make people aware, and so we may not get to Q&A again. We'll see. Right, let's get into the details of the show, and hope you all enjoyed Sunday's show with Madeline Mietain. Some interesting stuff. We didn't get through half of it, and so she'll be coming back not this Sunday because me and Randy Morgans will be on OYM on Sunday afternoon at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so look forward to that. That's 1 p.m. Standard Central Time for the admins. Yes, you, Holly. Right, let's get into the details. Link for the show is www.spreaker.com/user/8955881. You can also listen live on the articles website called thinkdifferent.thepeoplesclub.org, and all the archives are up there, including the special shows and including the recent ones from Russia with Love. And we also posted the transcript from Russia with Love on that site also. So go and check it out, thinkdifferent.thepeoplesclub.org. We have the Facebook site, Truth, Honour and Integrity, and a Facebook social media alternative without all the nonsense that Facebook brings, also called the Truth, Honour and Integrity. Some people had difficulty finding that. If you want to join and you can't find it, send an email to this email, where you can also send questions for the shows. Sometimes I don't always get a chance to answer those emails. I have a rather busy life. Sometimes they just get passed off into questions for the shows, and some of the questions don't get answered week one, depending on the volume we have. But they always get held back to other shows. Anyway, that email is truth.honour.and.integrity@gmail.com. And we also have the foundation website called The People's Club, and you can find that at thepeoplesclub.org. Right, let's get into some news. Way down the page. So many different pieces to cover. We did say this would take place a couple of years ago, that the information would reach staggering levels, and there's that many things coming forward now that it's, like you say, it's kind of difficult to keep up. And this is why this show is valuable, because we cover so many different topics and give insight and intel and opinion on many. So it allows you to connect the dots, and dot connecting is the fun and games part, because you'll see all of it is enmeshed with everything else. You find one link, you'll always end up linking back to somebody else and something else, and you'll see some of that in this show. Right, something we are covered. I mentioned 4 years ago about the emptying and exodus of California. Well, there's a piece done again this week. They're really concerned about it, except they keep putting the housing costs up and the rent up, so general people can't afford it. So many of the people are leaving California, and the migrants are choosing to go to the Golden State and lay down its roots in Sin City. Las Vegas is ranked as the most popular destination for the people moving from California the coast and also non-California metropolitan areas. Now, in total, more than 8% of people who moved out of California in the first quarter of 2017 chose Las Vegas. And Las Vegas represents a cheaper choice for Californian immigrants, given its warm climate and relatively, compared to California, low home prices. In fact, there's lots of homes empty in Vegas after that their market completely collapsed. And the median list pricing as of recently was $260,000 compared to $720,000, the average listing price in California, particularly places such as also in San Francisco as well, and downtown Los Angeles. But other cities are now being targeted, such as Phoenix and Houston. But they were also drawn to cities with burgeoning job markets, which is a plus these days, such as Seattle, and larger metropolitan areas like New York were also figured in the top 10. It's kind of out of the frying pan into the fire, California to New York, but you never know. Anyway, this is a continuation, and I think this figure is low. I think it's much higher, but you get in some of these stories from the media, and they don't always tell the truth, but they reckon in the last 10 years in California, more than 1 million people more moved out than people moving in. That's despite the influx of those from South America. People power. Let's leave that one till later on, because there's a number of them. The head of Brazil's oil giant, Petrobras, Pedro Parente, has resigned. You're going to hear a lot of this. Following a nationwide strike by lorry drivers, this is more people power, that had caused huge disruption in Brazil. Very imitating the French, because that's what they do. They get the lorry drivers to go out and they go right across the 3 lanes of the interstate or the motorway and just crawl. Disrupts everything. Now, the strike was, this particular one was against diesel prices, which ended this week and caused major shortages in the country. Many of the protesters blamed Mr. Parente for rising costs, go figure, after the company stopped subsidising fuel prices for its domestic consumers. However, Petrobras gave no specific reason for the resignation. And in his resignation letter to the President, Michael Temer, he said the strike challenged the pricing policy he had implemented, and he said his role as CEO had stopped being positive. In other words, he was threatened. And the government needed to consider alternatives to its pricing policy going forward. 2 years ago, former Energy Minister Mr. Parente pegged the price of fuel in Brazil to international oil prices, which have since almost doubled. Yes, they're well aware of what they're doing. It's like the Chinese pegging their currency to the dollar. It's deliberate. The only people that suffer is the general populace, because they don't. But after years of corruption scandals involving senior politicians and officials in Brazil, his policy, he said, had helped Petrobras recover its market value. Perhaps if they stopped giving some of the funds to the Bush cartel, there may be more for the people. You never know. This is has been going on in the UK, and the public are now fighting back. Like I said, you're going to see many of these stories tonight. And a cosmetics company called Lush has been heavily criticised on social media for a campaign aimed at drawing attention to the so-called UK Spice Cops scandal. And Lush says it is highlighting the ongoing undercover policing scandal where officers have infiltrated the lives, homes and the beds of activists. So this company stepped up and chose to highlight it, but many on social media have accused the company of attacking the police and have called the campaign disgusting. Now you know how many agents are on social media where they dictate policy. This is how they work. But in response, Lush said it was not an anti-police campaign, and the firm said UK police forces were doing a difficult job with less funding, and it wanted instead to highlight a secretive subset of undercover policing that had undermined democracy. Now, the Advertising Standards Authority said it wouldn't be taking any further action as the matter is outside of their remit. That shows you how much social media is controlled. The minute somebody stands up and highlights an issue, in comes an army of agents and shuts them down. This is how it works. It's up to the people to recognise who they are and shut them down. Where are we next? Mr. Bush, one of them anyway, has gone on fire. The Bush has gone on fire. After years of being dogged by allegations of domestic abuse and sexual harassment, no surprise there, Jonathan Bush has stepped down as President, CEO and Director of Athena Health. You do get about, don't they? Oil and insurance, politicians. Jonathan Bush is the nephew of former President George Herbert Walker Bush. Dead Daddy was the subject of a Bloomberg story published over the weekend that contained new details about alleged inappropriate behaviour, including reports he had abused his ex-wife and created a sexually hostile in work environment. Yep, that's a Bush. Oh dear, here we go again. Sadly, the Zionists have been playing games again over in Israel. But two stories on that this week. But the United States has yet again vetoed a proposal to the UN against Israel, this time by Kuwait, which sought to offer international protection to Palestinian civilians in the wake of more than 120 deaths in the Gaza Strip. And in a speech to the Council, US Ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley, criticised the proposal, describing it as a grossly one-sided view. Really? Someone needs to fill it in on history, it seems. Haley accused Hamas, of all people, of inciting violent acts at the border between Gaza and Israel. But it seems she's forgot who funds Hamas, clearly. And she went on and says Hamas is purposely infiltrating the Great March of Return mass protests with its terrorist fighters and deliberately using civilians as human shields. Oh my God. They're reading their own script. The terrorist group Hamas bears primary responsibility for the awful living conditions in Gaza, she said. That was before the UN vote. Now, the US was the only council member to vote against the proposal. There were 10 votes in favour and 4 abstentions, those abstentions being Poland, the UK, Holland and Ethiopia. No surprise, those 4. Now, a resolution needs 9 votes in favour and no vetoes by America, Russia, China, France or the UK in order to be adopted. So in other words, those 5 countries decide everything. Is there a connection apart from Russia? Yep, Rothschilds. And the message given by the councils today as it votes against this is that the occupying power enjoys an exception, the Kuwaiti representative said after the proposal was vetoed. And he went on to say, why do Palestinians continue to suffer? Why does the international community fail to act? Why does Israel enjoy impunity? And why are all these lives lost and all this blood is being shed, he asked. Now, obviously, this vote came a week after we saw dozens of mortar shells fired into Israel from Palestine and airstrikes carried out on Palestine by the Israeli military. And this has been a major escalation in recent months, while the world is focused on Kim Jong-un, or Jong-un, and they carry on their fun and games. Now, the Great March of Return is part of the demonstrations that have been going on, and despite numerous deliberations, the Council has yet to respond to the violence, even as UN envoy Nikolai Mladenov warned this week that Gaza was close to the brink of war. And this was the second time that Ms. Haley has blocked a UN measure on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Now, in support of the Palestinians, there was a major move by Argentina this week. The soccer team decided to get political and showed its support for the Palestinians this week by cancelling a soccer match with Israel. I suggest that whilst it may be the first, it won't be the last. I think the world is getting tired of the tactics of the Zionists in Israel. And also getting tired of America supporting it as well. Next one. On and on it goes, it seems. Use excessive and brutal violence. Blame somebody else. Always the victim, never their fault. Now, I'm not talking about Liverpool soccer fans this time. But Israel committing crimes again without impunity. And here's the latest this week. Thousands of Palestinians had attended the funeral in Gaza of a volunteer medic who was killed by Israeli fire during the protests on the border. Razan al-Najjar, who was 21, was shot dead as she ran towards the border fence on Friday to help a casualty. And in a statement, the Israeli military said it would investigate her death. Well, we all know how that turns out. They just ignore it. And later on Saturday, rockets were fired from Gaza and Israel reportedly responded with airstrikes. And the death of Ms. Razan al-Najjar followed weeks of deadly violence on the border. And as I said in the previous one, more than 100 people have been killed. And amidst protests in support of the declared right of Palestinian refugees to return to their ancestral home, which is now Israel. Now, the Medical Relief Society says Ms. Najjar had been trying to reach an injured protester when she was shot near the city of Khan Yunis. And shooting at medical personnel is a war crime under the Geneva Conventions. The UN envoy for the Middle East, Mladenov, tweeted that Israel needed to calibrate its use of force and Hamas needed to prevent incidents at the border. Anyone else thinks it's way beyond time that the American people's money is being used to fund what is a barbaric, anti-humanity state known as Israel? None of our money is going to Israeli people. None. So we're not sending aid to Israel or its people. We're sending war money. All of it being used to fund what is the UK created state that has got nothing to do with an old book or historical nature, and everything to do with being a military base of operations for the Middle East and Africa. This nonsense really has to stop, and it's time all countries, maybe they should declare sanctions. 100 and odd countries declaring sanctions on Israel until their government is forced out. Sounds like a plan to me. Australia, they've some of their upper people have decided they've had enough as well, as the consumer watchdog this week has announced that the financial institutions ANZ, Deutsche Bank and Citigroup, as well as several individuals, will be prosecuted for an alleged cartel arrangement. No surprise there. And the allegations concern arrangements for the sale of $2.5 billion of Australian dollars worth of ANZ shares 3 years ago. Now, the charges will involve alleged cartel arrangements relating to trading in ANZ shares following an institutional share placement in August 2015. Now, what is being alleged that ANZ and the individuals were knowingly concerned in some or all of the conduct. And ANZ, for those who don't know, is one of Australia's so-called Big Four banks, i.e. rogue banks. And the charges related to a placement of 80.8 million shares in total. And the shares were offered to the institutional investors at a discounted rate of $31 basically per share. And the whole deal was underwritten by the three big global investment banks, Deutsche, no surprise, Citigroup, no surprise, and even less a surprise, JP Morgan. Collecting money for nothing again. And this was all part of a bid by ANZ to raise capital to meet regulatory requirements. In other words, balance the books. Just create money out of thin air and balance the books. If found guilty, they face maximum penalties of 10% of annual turnover, or 3 times the benefit gained from the criminal cartel behaviour. The suspected individuals could face up to 10 years in prison also if found guilty. Banks are getting hammered. This was a rather disturbing story. Again, it won't be a surprise. I told you about some of the fun and games in Puerto Rico when the hurricane struck and how they were emptying people out. People were going missing, families were being separated. Sound familiar? Yep, they've done it many times before. Just that people are realising now more and more what they're up to. And a Harvard University released this week some official figures that at least 5,740 people died in Hurricane Maria. That's more than 70 times higher than the initial government estimate. Why the discrepancy, one might add? Now, the data that was released on Friday shows that there were at least 1,400 additional deaths in the months after Maria struck the island than during the same period the year before. Clean-up, removals, you know how it works by now. Now, the Harvard study noted that the Puerto Rican officials had declined to disclose key mortality statistics that could shed more light on the lives that were lost after Hurricane Maria, and Puerto Rican officials had stopped providing updated information on the death toll from December onwards, raising questions about the actual number of lives that were lost from the storm. Now, the Puerto Rican governor, Ricardo Rossello, said, Democrat, said in an interview on Clinton News Network that he was shocked to hear that mortality statistics have been withheld from researchers, adding that they will be held to pay if territory officials declined to release the data. Big cover-up going on there. Big cover-up. Like Haiti, like Epstein Island, like Necker Island, US Virgin Islands, they're all involved. Remember me saying last year, look at the circle in the south of America and you'll see a pattern. Guatemala is the latest one that's being emptied out. Some stories never cease to amaze at times, but perhaps we think we've heard it all, but maybe not. You know, what's being taught in schools has been a source of contention by me for many years, and obviously that's been relayed in the shows, and particularly in America. We've had Islam, religious propaganda, LGB and transgender programming to kids, sexuality teaching of oral sex to 6-year-olds in school, and now this. And we wonder why our youth are not progressing. An American school teacher this week has been charged after feeding a puppy to a snapping turtle in front of his students. Robert Crossland, who teaches in Preston, Idaho, was charged with misdemeanor animal cruelty, and after the incident recently, the turtle was humanely euthanized as it is considered an invasive species. Apparently Mr. Crossland could be jailed for up to 6 months. Really? Just 6 months? What about the trauma to the kids? Me thinks it's 6 years. Who comes up with this stuff? You know, I think I'll take a puppy into a class with a turtle I'm feeding. These people are sick. And he can also be fined up to $5,000. And several US media outlets said attempt to contact Mr. Crossland had proven unsuccessful. Yeah, no doubt he's been spirited away. And he'd been teaching at this school for a number of years. And one calling for him to be fired and asking, do we really want teachers killing living animals in front of impressionable junior high students? That was part of a petition, and 190,000, as of when I wrote this, had signed it. Unbelievable. My mind boggles. It really does. It bothers me at times when you think you're spending so much time trying to save people, and there's people like that. Yeah. Social Security. Oops. We warned this would become a major issue. And its programme's costs will exceed its income this year for the first time since 1982, forcing the programme to dip into its nearly $3 trillion trust fund to cover benefits. Benefits indeed. This is 3 years sooner than expected a year ago, and partly due to lower economic growth projections, which according to all the mainstream media, the growth's gone up. Do we believe them? Obviously not. And according to the annual report, the trustees of Social Security and Medicare released on Tuesday said the programme's income comes from tax revenue and interest from its trust fund. The trust fund will be depleted completely in 2034, and Social Security will no longer be able to pay its full scheduled benefits unless Congress takes action to shore up the programme's finances. How about taking away their, what is it they retire on, 90,000 a year? That can go back into the trust fund. You get paid enough in backhanders and all kinds of other illegal deals whilst they're politicians. Look at Obama. What was he on? Less than $200,000 for being Prime Minister, or President, sorry, and had $2 billion within the first year in the Vatican Bank. Obviously didn't spend anything. Or he's getting backhanded deals, as we all know. Anyway, without any changes, recipients then would then only receive 3/4 of their scheduled benefits from income tax revenues. This is in 2034, but the way it's going now, that could well lower down. And the report also said that Medicare's hospital insurance fund would also be depleted by 2026. We'll have to get a move on and change things around. I picked up this just before I came on air, and it is a concern, but it's also a warning to the people who like to play war games in Chicago. And the village of Deerfield in northern Illinois has passed a ban on assault weapons, which is going to affect more than just sales and manufacturing. If the 18,000 residents of the Chicago suburb don't forfeit or secure weapons that fall under the ban by June the 13th, they will be charged $200 to $1,000 a day as a penalty. The people, this is obviously a concern, because if they get away with that, it'll roll out into another town and another town and another town, and it's a totalitarian creep again. Now, what I'm appealing for is the people of Chicago is to stop shooting each other. You're giving them what they want. So we have a responsibility as well. Stop giving them what they're looking for. They want everyone shooting each other, so they think, no, that's it, we're banning guns. That's why we get all the school issues. It's the way, problem, reaction, solution. It doesn't mean to say that we have to give them the solution. Now, Mr. Giuliani has threatened to take Special Counsel Robert Mueller to court if he attempts to issue a subpoena against President Trump. If Mueller tries to subpoena us, we're going to court, Mr. Giuliani said last week, and the former New York City mayor, who had joined Trump's legal team in April, warned just hours after he arrived, that the New York Times had revealed that Trump's lawyers sent Mueller a 20-page letter in January arguing that Trump couldn't obstruct justice because he has unfettered authority over all federal investigations. Now, the confidential letter obtained by the Times argues that the Constitution gives the President the broad authority to, if he wished, terminate the inquiry or even exercise his power to pardon. Though the letter predates Giuliano's involvement with the team, Giuliano did verify its content to ABC News this week, adding that the legal strategy the letter outlines still stands, with potential threats to pardon himself also added. It doesn't augur too well, methinks, and that could be perceived as a symbol of dictatorship. You know, said it in a recent show, truth never fears investigation. So if Trump has to go before the council and argue his point, then so be it. If he's got nothing to worry about, then just turn up, say what you have to say, and that's the end of it. End of the media playing games. But maybe he does have something to cover up, and that's why he's threatening pardons and all the other stuff. Who knows? But if it was me, I would just go anyway. If I knew I'd done nothing wrong, why would he? Now, there's been a lot of fuss about President Trump imposing tariffs on steel and aluminium imports. And I thought I would add a piece on that of what it really means, what it's going on, and why it's been done. And all the critics are fretting about a trade war, and others worry there will be disruptions to global markets. It's funny that, isn't it? They're not worried when there's disruptions to the American market, just global. But just how bad are things right now for America's manufacturing? Steel production in America has fallen by 20% over the past decade alone. And steel employment has dropped by roughly 50,000 jobs since 2000. So that's the impact on America. And Trump and the team are trying to turn that around. You know, Mr. Putin looks after his country and Xi looks after China. So why can't Trump look after Americans? You know, it's a good thing, whether you like Trump or you're not, whether you vote Republican or Democrat. It's obviously a good thing, is it? Is it not, for this country? Nobody seems to care that we've lost thousands of manufacturing jobs, 50,000 in the steel alone. What about all the other manufacturing jobs that were all shipped to China and Asia in readiness for the transferal of the Federal Reserve, which didn't take place? Well, here's how many American manufacturing jobs have been lost in just the past 20 years alone. 5 million. Of course, manufacturing paying jobs are generally higher earners than the minimum wage service industry, but most of the jobs in America are now. I think it's 83% service jobs. Most of them are minimum wage or barely above. So, apart from losing 5 million manufacturing jobs, we've also lost 60,000 factories, which once employed skilled workers and provided good middle-class wages. All have disappeared. Now, obviously this didn't happen overnight, but it's also inevitable given the set of naive trade policies that invited predatory trade from other countries, like China. Starting in 1994, China began to deliberately undervalue its currency against the dollar. A weaker currency made China's exports artificially cheap in the US market, boosting America's trade deficit with China from 30 billion in 1994 to 83 billion by 2000. Well, that's gone up considerably since. But that's when it all started. But this is all comes when President Clinton helped usher China into the World Trade Organization back in 2001. and Beijing promised to halt its currency manipulation, but that obviously didn't take place. And China continues to undervalue its currency, unleashing a flood of subsidized imports to the point where the US racked up $375 billion trade deficit with China last year. So this is why Mr. Trump's doing this. It's an imbalance of which we have to pay heavily long term, not only in terms of jobs, but it's hammered the middle class that we've lost all the manufacturing jobs, and we're also not self-sufficient in a number of products. This is why a lot of countries don't like Russia. Because Russia, you can make sanctions on Russia, they don't care. They've got everything you need. Every commodity they need, they have within their borders. So they're not bothered about sanctions. But we've outsourced our own self-sufficiency. That has to stop. But it's not just the currency that's being subsidised. Beijing also massively subsidises its state-owned enterprises and has successfully targeted steel, paper, glass, rubber and auto parts as industries to build at the expense of US competitors. So China now dumps products like steel on the world market at below the cost of production, all in a successful bid to put the rival American companies out of business, which is not the American companies out of business, the American people out of business. Because the companies, like rats that they are, all knew they were going to do that back in the 90s. And that's why we've seen the steady flow of the top so-called American companies going to Asia. That's when all the new market was going to be. So that was a new world order, not China, a new world order plan. China just implemented it. So I hope that helped give you an understanding on the tariff situation. This is interesting. Prince Charles has been asked to give witness statements to a public inquiry into how abuses alleged against a pedophile bishop were handled. The request for a statement from Charles and his private secretary was made public on Wednesday during an independent inquiry into child sexual abuse. Go figure. The inquiry is looking into the way abuse allegations against Bishop Peter Ball were dealt with, and Mr. Ball was sentenced to 32 months in prison in 2015 for numerous sexual offences going back to the 1970s. Less than 3 years. Charles is being asked to give a statement as he had exchanged letters with ex-Bishop Peter Ball, whose diocese included Charles' country estate Highgrove. And the contents of the letter or letters have not been made public. Well, perhaps they should. Then we'll find out Big Ears is involved in it as well. Here's a story today again, a sign of the times. Small steps here and there. The leader of a rogue Baltimore police unit sobbed in court as he was sentenced to 25 years in prison in a corruption scandal. Prosecutors called breathtaking. Ex-police sergeant Wayne Earl Jenkins apologised in court for the crimes he committed while heading an elite squad called the Gun Trace Task Force. He said, "I'm so sorry to the citizens of Baltimore," but he was arrested along with almost every member of that particular unit late last year. 25 years. And cops thought they were above the law. Maybe it's changing. former US Defense Intelligence Agency has been arrested this week for attempting to spy on America for China. Probably Mr. Rothschild involved again. Anyway, Ron Rockwell Hansen, 58, was arrested by the FBI on his way to a Seattle airport to catch a flight to China this week. And the Justice Department said Mr. Hansen is accused of attempting to transmit national defense information and receiving at least $800,000 for acting as a Chinese agent. Unbelievable. People power. I'm going to end the news portion on people power. Here's the first one. Spanish Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy has been forced out of office by a no confidence vote in Parliament. And the socialist leader Pedro Sanchez, who filed the motion after Mr. Rajoy's party was implicated in a corruption scandal, quote unquote. I told you you'd get used to that, didn't I? We're going to sign a new page in the history of democracy in our country, Mr. Sanchez said ahead of Friday's votes. And Mr. Rajoy is the first Prime Minister in modern Spanish history to be defeated in a no-confidence motion. And he said he'd failed to take responsibility for his party involvement in the scandal, which hit the headlines again last week after one of its former treasurers was given a 33-year jail sentence. The High Court in Madrid convicted Luis Bárcenas of receiving bribes, money laundering and tax crimes, and the case centred on a secret campaign fund from which the PP ran from 1999 through 2005. So that's the Spanish Prime Minister gone. I think there was 3 in total Prime Ministers fired or forced to resign in the past week. Next item of people power. Tens of thousands of Polish people this week marching against forced vaccinations by the government puppets. That's something we need to see in many more countries. Authorities in Venezuela have said that it has begun releasing groups of opposition activists who had been jailed for alleged misconduct during anti-government protests. The former mayor of San Cristobal, Daniel Ceballos, who was imprisoned in 2014 for allegedly inciting violence, was among the freed activists present at a televised meeting arranged by the country's Constituent Assembly. And the doors are open for those who choose the path of peace and reconciliation, Nicolas Maduro said recently, who's the re-elected president and currently in reconciliation talks with opposition leader Lady Gomez. That was because of people power. They asked for all the activists to be released. There's another one, people power. Jordan's King Abdullah II on Monday accepted the resignation of his embattled Prime Minister and named a leading reformer in his place, hoping to quell the largest anti-government protests in recent years that are also seen as a potential challenge to his 2-decade-old rule. The kingdom is a key military and political ally of the West in a turbulent region, and any threat to Jordan's stability is viewed with concern, particularly by neighbouring Israel and by the US Prime Minister Hani Mulki's resignation came after several days of mass protests across Jordan against planned tax increases and a series of price hikes of basics such as fuel and electricity. People said they've had enough there also. It's getting a common theme, is it not? People around the world deciding you know what, we've had enough of this nonsense, and look what happens. Prime ministers get fired, prime ministers go to jail, and people are getting changes they wish to see. Although I hope they follow up and not just accept that the new replacement is going to do everything the way they wish. Only their continued involvement makes them accountable. Right, let's get into, let's have a music break, and then we're going to get into some intel and some other news items I need to cover. Hi all and welcome back. See, they're playing games again on Facebook. Stolen the page. Let's see how far we get with this intel. If they skip bits, I will repeat it until everyone hears it. So I'm going to repeat the intel from Sunday, because the Sunday shows are not as listened to as much as the Thursday shows. But maybe more should go and listen. It was interesting. We've had a number of interesting Sunday shows the last few weeks, and we'll have another one this Sunday. Me and Randy Morgans are going on OYM, and that will be an interesting show, no doubt. But things are bubbling big time on many levels now. Some not so good, as things are revealed that are unpleasant, but there are many good things that are going on, and progress is steady and also expanding. The desperation of the cabal is increasing by the minute. It is a minute by minute basis now. Nothing is built in a day, even Rome. Things can be destroyed in a day, depending on the scale of things. But the scale of what is taking place here now is vast and beyond comprehension to most, even some of those in the awake community. A team that lacked resources and numbers set about destroying something that has been in place for tens of thousands of years, and over the last decade has been steadily and rapidly in some cases, despite some people who think everything happens at a click of a finger and should have been done yesterday, and in some aspects eroding their capacity to continue their tyrannic slavery system, and all their lies and criminality are now being exposed on record levels. I think you can see that even by the news items. Many are stepping down. Some are stepping down and helping. Many are singing about others. Many are losing it. And many are running for their lives. And some are committing suicide. You're going to see an increase in that. There's been 2 this week already. And I'll cover that later. But the team may have lacked in resources and numbers, but we're not lacking in a fierce determination to finally end the scourge and denigration of this planet and also its inhabitants. And the message is, we will not quit until that task is completed. We are winning at the top end and winning heavily, and I would expect you all to see way more proof of that during this calendar year. Now, a memo was circulated through HSBC and other institutions stating for them to not transfer any money at all to America. This is the latest of the Rothschilds and other goons thinking they can starve America out. We're the last ones to go down. They knock America down, it knocks the rest down. Well, you know what? We don't need you and your ilk either, Mr. Rothschild, so go and F yourselves. We're just not bothered by your threats. The world's waking up to your illusions of the facts that you think you own 80% of the world. The reality is you own jack shit. And many people, groups and countries are now seeing it. TikTok Roths, NATO and Chinese elders. Now, the latest word from the Rothschildians, yes, they are closest in DNA to the Draco, is that they have built a quantum system out of Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and they are saying that they own and run the financial system. Yeah, right. But there's one catch, there always is with the Rothschildians. You can all access their special system for $30 million each to access it. I'm not too sure that's going to go down too well. Well, I hope it doesn't, and I hope it makes other countries realise, and governments and financial institutions, most of which we have already spoken to by the team, that these people are just fake rogues. Simple as that. Like that RV that fails week after week after week. This one will also. Anna von Reitz is promoting this platform, and this came from two sources, and sadly it tells you all you need to know about her and her hidden agendas, and even if they're not hidden, one has to ask, is supporting anything that the Rothschilds do a good deed for the people? Well, clearly not. You know, this is the same woman who tried to secure from the Manor World Holding Trust 1/3 of America's in-ground resources for the benefit of the Vatican, of which she is a private secretary to the pedophile participant, procurer and cover-up expert known as Pope Francis. So I don't want to hear any more of what Anna von Reitz is doing, saying or whatever. It is what it is. And she is a paid-up member of the Nazi group AAIA, and is involved in the Rothschilds, Keenan, and NATO. So I don't want to hear any more about her. I opened the show with Showdown. Maybe the Roths would like a full-on showdown where we can prove to the world once and for all where you have a live on air, the Rothschilds bring their alleged quantum system, and Kim can present her system, and then we can all find out which one is true and which one is not, which works and which doesn't. Wouldn't that be fantastic TV? Manor World Holding Trust against the Rothschilds. So bring it on. Like I said previous, truth doesn't fear investigation. So let's put it all out where the people can see who's telling the truth and who's not. I think we all know which one's which. And a message to the clowns that are following these psychopaths: if the Roths owned everything and have funds to allegedly pull off the RV, why do they need 30 million per country or organisation to access their alleged quantum system? Why? According to them, they own 80% of the world, so why are they charging 30 million to access the system? Because they're lying. So back in the real world, reality is, with all their so-called wealth and ownership, they still haven't pulled off the RV and still haven't paid you all out, and now they want to mug you again and say, give us 30 million to access our machine. Please don't keep falling for these BS artists. Like I said, these are not Robin Hood taking off the rich to go to the poor. These are not Robin Hood at all. These are robbing bastards. Pure and simple. Who think the whole of humanity is there at their behest. Well, stuff that. 30 million indeed. 30 million lashes is about right. Banks and credit card systems going down. This is becoming a common theme. And the reason is they're going down because of the banks themselves and the Rothschilds et al. Are trying to reset their systems and reinstall the back doors into the system that Kim took out. They've tried it with many banks globally. Some in New Zealand were mentioned, but the list is extensive, and none of their attempts to return it back to the old system of cheat and steal have worked, and it's not expected to. The Visa crash is going on in sequence around the world, as it was back then. It appears to have not happened. Maybe they've learned sense. Well, that would be something dramatic in itself. But they were planning to go into Asia and crash their visa system and try and reset it from there, and then ending up in America towards the end of this week. Well, thankfully those haven't progressed, which is good. But I would still advise, a message to all listeners again, is keep cash. I know cards are convenient, and debit cards with Visa on are exactly the same, but we have warned of the consequences of convenience many, many times. Keep cash at all costs. Final warning. Now, what took place that facilitated this Visa attempted heist and reset is the banks have lost all of their clearance accounts. All of them. These are the side accounts that they use to make vast quantities of funds via our own money, which is held in abeyance, as they say. So when you transfer money through a banking system, the flow of cash is not direct A to B, as in buyer and seller. It goes into a vast side chamber, in essence, generating vast quantities of funds, and then they filter through it and release it, or as shown with the trust transfers, hold it back or keep it. But it wasn't just the trust who were being brushed off with transfers, and it started to escalate with regular accounts also. Excuses of wires were not ready, wires not processed, wires never arrived. More like wired money was transferred into a Wall Street fast-track hedge fund bet, where they use our collective money, manipulate markets, and use our funds to generate more funds for themselves. Now, whilst this is all annoying, it's also a further sign of their desperation to cream funds from everywhere. Why? Because as we've told you on this show many times, they are failing and flailing. Now, the object of the new system is a direct A to B live banking. Well, what does that mean? Well, the receiver has the money for goods and services instantly, and not wait until banks have collected and used their money to garner interest and or decide not to send it. This is why you have to wait to clear checks. There is no waiting. Checks are cleared upon signing. And what they do is they keep it for a few days or a few weeks, or as in the case of the 400 million from the trust, a few months. And they use it for their own ends. And the same applies to wire transfers. And it all adds up to billions of dollars outside of the banking system. This was off ledger. So the team took advantage of them playing games and trying to reset the system. As with them doing a reset, it then flags up the anomalies within the system for you and eliminates it. So we'd like to say thanks to all the banks trying to reset their systems, as the reset of systems to implement new viruses or backdoors does not work anymore, and a reboot sends the system into seek and destroy mode. Oops. Following all that, the system flagged up all the side accounts, the clearance accounts, and we managed to locate all of them. And so what happened next is we swept up all the clearance accounts, emptied all of them, and transferred the wires to the people and where they were supposed to go instantly. The ones that were left over, because none of them were tagged for delivery, whilst they kept hold of them, and this amounted to around 150 billion worldwide. All 150 billion was reinserted back into the new system. No longer is it off ledger and at their use. They, the bankers, were then locked out of all the clearance accounts altogether. No further access. And any attempt to reload or access those type of accounts now requires identity codes, which would directly identify who's committing the crimes. So you've got no ID, you have no access. You give your ID, you are exposed as a fraud. The new system is only accessible by Kim whilst this clean-up operation is ongoing. Only she has the codes, so anyone trying to gain access flags themselves up as frauds. Banks were desperately trying to contact Black Dragon groups for the codes and others, fake elders and all that nonsense, except none of them have it. They are also unable to siphon a wire anymore. As of Friday, no wires, ACHs, EFTs going in and out of any banks, because all of them now are read-only, not accessible. You can read it, or you can look, but you can't touch. And so this is why they started on the Visa system. That is now read-only, and they are unable to touch anything in transit. All credit card transactions go through the City of London. I hear their machines over there don't work too well anymore. So it's back to playing online solitaire for you guys. Or is it tic-tac-toe? You played your poker hands and you lost to the Queen of Hearts. I'm sorry. We have a lot more intelligence than you gave us credit for. Rest assured, no one of the public will lose any of their funds in these transactions. I wish to make that quite clear. It is now safe in the new system, and it's also protected. I have no doubt the cabal will engineer a fear-porn message and blame the team for missing funds like they did when the RV failed last month. All the funds will be going back to where they should be and who they belong to, whether it's the government of the country or the people themselves. This is all about removing what they have stolen from us for thousands of years. So please ignore their protestations should they arrive. So that was the message on Sunday. And we're going to go into more intel and pieces that I need to say, inside insights and whatnot. But the leak details of the current Bilderberg meeting, I think it was item 9, involves talks on Manor World Holding Trust and quantum computing. No surprise there then. But there are rumours circulating this may be the last Bilderberg meeting ever. Make of that what you will. Now the Rothschilds' alleged quantum system, whether it's quantum or not, or it's just some rogue Hercules or Prometheus or some other ancient god, Babylon and all that malarkey that they have. names for. It did go online on Tuesday morning, trying to implement siphons in the system. So, in other words, putting the clearance accounts back and siphoning the funds out. By mid-afternoon Tuesday, it was gone. It couldn't break through the firewalls. Oops. Kim and team just watched it for a while and then took it down. So, I think Ms. Von Reitz has put her faith in the wrong people. So when all else fails, let's roll out Plan 2056. HSB started rolling out and talking about digital currency on Tuesday. Why? Because they have nothing left. And I hope people don't fall for this bullshit. It is what it is. They're trying to implement digital because they've got no expansion of currency itself. We've been talking about this a long time. They just keep swilling the money round. There is no new money. It's being blocked off. The new money came from the trust. A lot less people are, in the Western world are not having loans. That creates new money. They used to use the pledges of the trust and then pull money out. They can't do that anymore. And the Federal Reserve has not printed new currency since 2009. So following their fake attempt to issue super notes, if there was loads of new money and new currency, why did they print out 180 billion super notes? 180 billion in dollars. Fairly obvious, because they didn't have enough of the other to keep going. Well, that got stopped as well. It has now come to light. I was given a document this week. In fact, I've received a number of documents this week that I'm going to cover bits of in these pieces in this hour. I'm probably going into the third hour, we'll see. That Hillary and Huma Abedin arranged for $40 million of our money to be sent to the Pakistan Army for contract killings in 2011. This is going to break fairly soon. And this next piece may also be linked. This is why I said it's all about connecting the dots. And Mr. Trump said on Twitter today, he urged the Department of Justice not to accept a plea agreement from a former IT aide to a congressional Democrat who is being prosecuted in a scheme to fraudulently obtain home equity loans. This is involving the Awan brothers, Imran Awan, who worked for the Democratic lawmakers, including the Democratic National Committee chairwoman, Republican Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who we've all heard about her involvement with Hillary, and is said to be in talks this week to strike a plea, an agreement in the case that's being put forward by the Department of Justice. And here's the key part of it. Mr. Awan and his wife Hina Alvi are accused of obtaining home equity lines of credit from the Congressional Federal Union by giving false information about two properties and sending the money to individuals in Pakistan. This to me, while it doesn't outline it, this to me is funding of our money for ISIS. That's what's been going on. And Obama is involved in it as well. Both of them face federal bank fraud and conspiracy charges and have pled not guilty to the charges. I would suggest you watch that rather closely, because it will spill over. Like I posted yesterday, the pot is bubbling. What I can also let you know is there's more, way more than a few dozen FBI now willing to testify against Hitler in the email server and corruption issue. That's about to break also. Just that we now need the NYPD to do the same. All the ones of you that saw the videos on Wiener's laptop, all of you, walk out, step down until that's released. Because the public won't look too kindly on you if you keep hiding behind the scenes. I'm well aware there's all kinds of threats going on, but they can't shoot everyone in the NYPD if you all walk out. You should have all walked out in 2001. You can't keep ignoring the crimes that are going on within your city. Next news item or piece that I need to cover, because it's not what it seems in the media, is the Weinstein rape issue. And people think it's him and maybe Alison Mack and a couple of others. It's not. It's been listed in the court as a RICO events. Big difference. Which means there are other defendants as part of the racketeering. Now, I'm speculating here, but it could well be he is the sacrificial lamb for the public. But others involved will be charged also and hopefully convicted. But it may well be it'll be kept away from the public's eyes. It may well be the more familiar faces will be held in a military tribunal court, and it's also expected most of the sexual and ritual stuff will not be made public fully, but will be made public enough to let the people know it went on. Now, on the court document, it's the charges are against what is known as the Weinstein Sexual Enterprise Group. So this is not just a single man causing issues. This is a whole group of them. And the others that were added to the RICO event are Weinstein participants, intelligence participants, aka agencies, the firm participants, I'm not too sure what the meaning behind that is, journalist participants, film participants, and other unnamed co-conspirators set forth. That's what it says on the court document. So as you can see, this is a larger group that involves intelligence agents, the firm, possibly the mafia, or groups of that ilk, journalists involved, and film, that's your actors and actresses involved in it, and other unnamed co-conspirators, probably politicians. So that clears up the Weinstein. I think some of you may have been seeing odd portions of this, but what I'm going to tell you is it goes way deeper. As many of the leading players in not only Pizzagate but fraud and corruption and all kinds of other heinous crimes are also asking for immunity to testify against others. Well, you know what? Stuff that. These people have been beyond the law for far too long and committed some of the most heinous acts ever on this planet. These are not the crimes you give immunity to. Spying, espionage, even some low-level fraud or corruption, as long as it's not involving kids. You don't give immunity to pedophiles. You don't give immunity to child trafficking or the rituals. So tell them to stuff their immunity where the sun don't shine. Erik Prince, you've mentioned him a few times recently, the founder of Blackwater, who was running for the top job of the head of the Black Dragon Group for North America, which is currently vacant due to Dick Cheney being fired for non-performance. Anyway, Mr. Prince has now been discounted for that role. He failed to fulfill the contract with the Chinese elders and Rothschilds and has paid a price. And from what we gather, is the rogue Black Dragon Group are having major issues filling that role at this time. And this to me is another sign of their control collapsing in on itself. No longer are people giving in to the seducement as easily as before, because too many directly via information from Kim and messages and intel that are contained within our own show have now started to have a real effect. People are sitting up and are taking notice. And they're really now starting to see through the illusions that they created. That's all they are, illusions. Lies have been exposed, promises repeatedly failed, truth from the past, and also the now being revealed on a vast scale. And like I've said previously, our show goes way further than the statistics and what people may think. It's had a big effect. Now this next intel item will no doubt bring large smiles to people's faces, as it did mine. But it was a major issue going back in September of last year. Now this news item has been known for a while, but was kept quiet for safety reasons and the consequences, so it could be delivered without intervention. Back in 2017 September, the Rothschilds, who own 6 seats on the UN Council, which is now owned and controlled by the Manor World Holding Trust. And those goons think they own the whole of the UN and the world, as we already know. And they threatened all nations in the meeting last September that if they were not in charge by September of 2018, they are going to unleash global bio-warfare. That was the threat that was delivered, and so teams worked on how to stop that. And this is what they came up with. Are you ready? If they release the bio-warfare, the viruses have been back-engineered with their own DNA. So if they release it, it will take them out only. So go ahead, Roths, and make our day. Bye. Another threat failed. Oops. like I said, we're winning big at the top end. The public end has yet to be seen it the way we'd all like it. But the top end, the bigger picture, we're winning big. Tucson, Arizona. I thought I was going to cover this. This has been simmering behind the scenes for a week or so. And this is more of the same connections, connect the dots, to do with child trafficking and other ritual abuses. Now, the company that's been involved in finding where these child trafficking tunnels were found is called Cemex, S-E-M-E-X. They're the ones that own it, and they are linked with the Clintons, go figure. Haiti, go figure. And also a business contract between the Clinton Foundation and Cemex to the tune of $7 million to build in Haiti. Well, clearly they never did any of that. And Cemex is also linked with the company Bronfman and Rothschilds. The second name will be familiar, as you know. The first name may not be to some, but Bronfman's is famous for the two sisters who funded the NXIVM group. Yes, them. Now, the Rothschilds part in that group is due to Lynn Forrester, the Rothschilds, who is basically an out of touch with reality bitch and should be run off the internet, in my opinion. But there's another Rothschilds with a connection to Tucson also, as the mayor is Jonathan Rothschild, who appears to be doing nothing to help or deal with these issues. Lizards being lizards. But at which point do we, the people, decide we need lizards removed from society altogether? That's the big question. Wherever they go is death and destruction, or pain and trauma. They don't have anything anymore. It's all an illusion. Why are we tolerating them amongst us? But I want to say kudos to the veterans group, by the way, who have been uncovering these places, not just Tucson either, and getting information out despite threats to their lives. My question is, where is the militia in all this? Why aren't they supporting it? Good question. So they did rescue 160 kids there before Cemex bulldozed the whole site, I'm hearing. The classic Clinton tactic, if ever there was one. Just get rid of the problem, it seems. Again, like NYPD, the cops there knew what was going on. Either they're complicit in it fully, or they need to stop shitting their pants with threats and come out altogether and run these people out of town and into prison permanently. So apparently the website known as Snopes is a better term, or Spook. And I see some members referring to it occasionally as proof or truth or false. Please stop doing that. Snopes is Langley, CIA, pure and simple. And since when have Langley ever told the truth in the now? I'll give you documents 50, 60 years later with all kinds of black felt tip running through it. Please stop looking to Snopes for truth or fiction. Dear me. Now, I did an article last week, and the reason I did it was I was aware of some rumblings and one or two members gave me some more details, which I'm thankful for, on the guy who was arrested on the court steps. Tommy Robinson was given 13 months jail for shouting at a Muslim group who was attacking children and young teenagers. What I will tell you now is the reason I did it, I still ran the piece, is that I was pleased the public were at least fighting for something, even if they're not knowledgeable what's really going on. It is a change to see people standing up for others. Now what we need to do is get those people and educate them what's really going on. Well, what's really going on with the Tommy Robinson incident is it's all fake. What they're trying to do is engineer an anti-Muslim stance in the UK. Now it is suspected they will try and fake his death in prison, blame it on Muslims to generate hatred of Muslims in the UK, and launch a war, which is exactly what the Zionists want. Wipe out the Muslims, which is a Christian sect, as covered in the Russia with Love series. It's not a separate religion, it was a branch of Christian sect until 1180. And the Christians, which is a cult of darkness, I know that's going to upset many, but that's the reality. And you want to belong to something and feel only religion can save you. Since when has religion never saved anyone? How about joining the religion of the self? You have all you need to save you. We have all we need to save us. And hopefully some room to help others also. Now, I want to make it clear, I'm not neglecting the fact that some Muslims are not involved in some heinous practices. They are. You know, the question remains is, though, are they A, really Muslims? Are they B, paid agents? And C, who gains from it? Well, here's the facts of my stance. It's the Albert Pike who prophesied, which really means plans, back in 1880. World War III, clash of the civilizations, Muslims and Christians. Can you not see that narrative and directive being played out now? Look deeper, if not. Bear in mind, Islam was a Christian sect back in the 1100s, as I said. It's one and the same. So they're not fighting for different religions. They're just killing each other for the benefit of a third group. See the pattern now? Now, if you think it's all Muslims attacking these young girls and kids, I want to remind people of a news item from 4 or 5 years ago, may even be 6 now, where some UK soldiers were killed allegedly by Muslims in the war. And there was a ceremony for them in the UK, and the British people came out to honour their dead. But amongst the audience was darker skinned people in full white cloth with inflammatory banners saying death to the UK and USA soldiers and other equivalent inflammatory remarks. Now, many people were outraged, as most would be. and that's understandable. It's disrespecting the dead, and all this was being filmed by the media, and in particular helicopter footage from the Sky News. Now the demonstrators suddenly peeled off from the audience and went down a back alleyway towards a riot police vehicle, all dressed in white robes and turbans. And what was caught on the footage was them disrobing, and underneath they were in police and military uniform, all caught on camera. Those weren't Muslims protesting at all. This is what the state do. All theatre, all staged, like the school shootings, and nobody's saying no one died. But it's all theatre being passed off as something real. So you can all see how easy it is to be fooled. I'm sure many by now choose to step behind the headline and ranting and see the bigger picture. It's all propaganda to sidetrack you and follow the official line, which is let's have World War III, Muslims against the Christians. When if you really dig deep into history, they're one and the same. So why would the same people kill each other? Part of an agenda, you see. All laid out near 130 years ago. This is why we need to find out the real history. This is why I did the series From Russia With Love. For 100 years now, the rest of the world have believed that their country was communist, which was taken over by the Russian people and implemented. But it wasn't, was it? It isn't communist at all. That's a political agenda done by a certain group. Like I said, and see who gains from it. Well, like what happened in Russia, only one group of people gained from it, the Zionists. Who will gain out of Muslims and Christians fighting? Same again. We have to end Zionism. We have to end Nazism. It's one and the same in essence. Superiority, thinking they're above everybody else. They're not. And for heaven forbid, do not take it out on the Jewish people. They're being used as pawns far more than you realise. They've been lied to far more than you realise as well. And remember, it's a political agenda you're fighting, not the Israeli people. Faceless men is what you're fighting. That was Creed and the Faceless Men. Yes, but the faces are starting to come out into the public. Now, I'm gonna continue with the. Still got a number of pieces I need to cover. One or two will be unpleasant in this next portion, but I'm going to say it because we need the truth out. Let's start on a lighter news item. And the question is, because he's done it twice now in a week, is Trump going Donald Rumsfeld on us? He's done some strange Rumsfeld-esque speeches this week. Maybe it's code, who knows. But apparently he didn't like the Kim Jong-un meeting with a Russian minister last week and said this: I did not like the Russian meeting yesterday, as what's the purpose of this meeting? It could be a positive meeting. If it is a positive meeting, I love it. If it's a negative meeting, I'm not happy. And it could well be a very positive meeting. And some said in what seems to be an absolutely incoherent statement, and he made another one. I couldn't find the second one. But paranoia and full control are not a very good mix, Donald. You know, you've had and were given the solutions, Donald. Please exercise them and implement them, and all of it goes away. Things that make you go, I may have more in later shows of this. I mentioned earlier 2 suicides. Today, the sister of the Queen of Netherlands, or Holland, committed suicide, 33 years of age. And of course, the fashion designer out of New York, which always gets me worried, Kate Spade also. She is linked with the Clinton Foundation and also Haiti, go figure. You know, the question remains, why would a completely trashed Haiti need a fashion designer when they had no homes, businesses or infrastructure? I think it's a strong possibility that Miss Spade was involved with the children in Haiti. I could be wrong, and if I am, I'll hold my hand up. But there's far too many links now where children, Haiti, Clinton, connections go missing or die. So instead of Mueller investigating bogus Russian meddling in elections, how about saving American lives? I'm going to do the 2 unpleasant news items one after the other. But it's going to break out eventually some of the heinous acts that has been done against the American people. Like I said, I've been given access to some documents this week, and I've pulled certain pieces out of them, and this is one of them. And the elites, cabal, whatever you want to call them, were always worrying about nuclear war and how it would affect them. And so they used specialist teams to develop a radiation vaccine which prevented them from experiencing nuclear fallout and the damage that radiation does. Now, in order to do that, they carried out medical experiments necessary to develop this drug on thousands of US citizens. The government will eventually admit they killed, sacrificed 100,000 Americans to develop a radiation vaccine for the elites. This is what we're taking on. You know, people think you get rid of Trump or Obama or Bush. You're taking on a hidden element of total psychopaths. If you don't understand that by now, you really haven't researched enough. It's all been there in these shows and many other shows. It goes way above American politics, which is all theatre anyway. Over 100,000 killed just to develop a vaccine for the 1%. Now the second item is I've been pondering on this for the past few weeks, and it's a message I received, and it is a word of warning to the people of Hawaii. And what I received is, I'm not too sure that Hawaii will survive in the near future and may have to be evacuated permanently. Now, I'm hoping it doesn't come to that, but I felt I needed to say something and hope it's wrong, rather than keep quiet and watch it all play out. It's up to you what you choose to do with that information. Like I said, we're all hoping it's wrong. But too many of those type of messages have been borne out, as you've witnessed listening to THI and also on CV. But it doesn't, as it stands, look too healthy in the future for Hawaii. And what happened yesterday and early this morning, the vast freshwater lake completely disappeared within hours. And I think it's the main island of Hawaii. And it doesn't look like it's going to stop anytime soon. So we all... our thoughts are with all the people in Hawaii, but I felt I had to say something. In light of all that, at least Mr. Trump is putting some sort of block on it. But the Air Force was supposed had a deal in place to install 2 refrigerators in Air Force One for $24 million for 2 fridges. You could buy the whole of all the houses in Detroit for that. For 2 fridges for an airplane. Now, of course, we've all heard about the $450 to $1,000 for toilet seats from DoD expenses. Anyway, Republican Joe Courtney released a letter from Air Force Secretary Heather Wilson saying the Air Force and White House military office decided to cancel it out of prudent fiscal sense. Exactly. That $24 million can go and get the homeless off the streets or provide veterans with some help. Although I saw the news item but didn't have a chance to catch up on it. There appears to be some programme released today for the veterans. So hopefully there's not any hidden agendas in that, and it's actually help for the people. I want to say kudos to Senator Jeff Merkley. I didn't note which state it was. Perhaps one of the members can remind me. If not, look it up, because this is the type of senator we need, as in all of them. Well, Mr. Merkley tried to enter a former Walmart building. Hello, Jade Helm, anyone? Where children awaiting asylum into the USA Inc. are being separated from their parents and having pain inflicted upon them to discourage them from coming here. This is more of the child trafficking stuff. Now, the senator who went right up to the doors at the former Walmart building, was told he has no authority to enter the building. The senator. And the supervisor of the building refused to discuss with the senator what's going on within the facility. So I want to say kudos to Senator Jeff Merkley before he probably gets taken out. But we need the rest of the senators to support him and be as proactive as he's been. This needs to be exposed, and exposed heavily, and we get it all out in the open once and for all. The quicker it breaks in the open, the quicker we save children's lives. But quite how or why the government is splitting asylum seekers away from children under Trump's government, given he knows why the wall needs building, needs to be looked at and will be. Another item that came up that's going to throw a spanner in the works big time is Mariah Carey's sister today revealed her traumatic childhood in which she was taken into terrifying satanic ceremonies by close family members and sexually abused. Alison Carey told how a close family member used to take her to occult gatherings in the early hours of the morning where she was abused by cloaked worshippers. Indeed. Now, Alison, who's Mariah's sister, said she never saw Mariah at the gatherings, but she fears that she may have been a victim too, after their brother Morgan also confirmed he was taken to the occult group as a child also. Now, Alison, who is currently struggling to survive on food stamps while Mariah Carey prances around with all kinds, said that the family member who led the cult threatened to hurt Mariah if Alison ever told anyone what was going on. She said, "It sounds hard to believe, and I have so many memories I wish I never had." A close family member used to wake her up around just before 2 a.m, which in our 10 midnight till 4 a.m. is when your PSI field is at its lowest point, allowing spirits to inhabit should you not be shielded. And they used to take her to an old hall that looked like a castle, which was a short walk from the church we used to attend in Huntington, New York. That's going to be the next one to break out. Now, we've all heard the term Kurds, K-U-R-T-S, with in the middle, but little is known about them, and so I thought I'd start doing some research, and lo and behold I came up against a connecting dot. And this is a follow-on again from the Russia with Love series, and I found that the details that the Kurds are a more white race but also have blue eyes. So I dug deeper into it, and yes, it was confirmed these people were also a part of the old Rus Slavonic Aryan race. Now, a bit of history. Kurdistan 100 years ago was much bigger than it looks on the map now. Back then, it was half of what is now known as modern-day Turkey. It went into parts of Syria, a quarter of what is now known as Iraq on the eastern side of Iraq, and around 1/3 of Iran on its western side. That went all the way down to Kuwait and the Persian Gulf. Big change now. So after many years, including many wars, including the Ottoman Empire war by Saladin, who was also a Kurd and not a Muslim, by the way, they requested from the League of Nations, which preceded the UN, for their own state back. And this was back in 1919. Yeah, it's that date again. Well, England, France and Turkey divided it up between themselves. So now you know why there's always turmoil in that region. And it is the Kurds who have mainly fought the Islamic State, or ISIS. So in 2015, there's a famous Kurdish national singer by the name of Erbil, who created a new women's army of Peshmerga for fighting to fight against the fighters of ISIS or ISIL or IS and all the other names. And a crew of 123 women aged between 17 and 30, and it's called the Sun Girls, or Girls of the Sun. Of course, the sun is the god symbol, the swastika, the original swastika, same as the Rus. Now, all girls of the battalion are Kurds Yazidi, Yazidi, and they have suffered the most from terrorists of the Islamic State. Now, back in August of 2014, ISIS rushed into the Iraqi city of Sinjar, which is where the Yazidi live mainly, and arranged slaughter of the male Yazidi group who refused to accept Islam there, and took 300 Yazidi women prisoner to give them to what is known as the Jihadist. Don't ask me to spell that. It's difficult enough trying to say it. What for? Well, this question was answered by Adnan Kosher, the head of the Kurdish Cultural Centre in London, in material to the British online newspaper The Mail. Kurds and Yazidi are linked, but as Yazidi are a very close community, they kept their appearance of fair hair and blue eyes. Yes. They don't contract marriage with non-Yazidi, and ISIS captured 300 female Yazidis from Sinjar to take them in wives and to have them Muslim children. If they can't kill all Yazidi, they will try to destroy the blood of the white person, known as the blonde bloodline. Now, Kurds, like in India, of course, we heard in the Russia with Love series mention about India, or what was known as Dravidia, also have a caste system, and they will not entertain marrying or sexual contact outside of their people due to the weakenings of the people, which is related to dark magic. Nothing to do with racism or colour of the skin. It's everything to do with dark magic. So it seems that the Aryans went a lot further than we realise, unlike Tartaria in northern Russia. Kurdistan has been erased from history, the map, or knowledge until now. Now I keep seeing this on some of the forums, and I've seen it occasionally on our own page, and I feel I need to mention it briefly in a recent show, but I need to make a highlight of it. And what people are saying is that they are taking or have taken the red pill, aka the Matrix movie. But people need to quit saying they've taken the red pill. It's another trap. You don't think they would give you a full-on clue of how to escape, do you? Nope. The Matrix is not an escape movie. There are hints in it, but basically it's a take-the-piss movie. All the clues are wrapped up in riddles, cryptic and puzzles. Unless you have background knowledge, you're not going to make any sense of it. But the red pill is LSD and is essentially another spirit world trap. Now the key is to escape the spirit world, not get trapped in it. We've spoken about this before, about the lower astral. That's where disease, illness, possession, walk-ins, mental illness all come from that realm. So what they're doing is installing into your head a meme, the red pill. So you get trapped in the lower astral. This is what all these fake shamans in South America and this country, they're only there to make money. They're not enhancing you spiritually. They're trapping you in a spirit realm where you may think that you had a nice trip and you come back, but the reality is it's not you. Sorry, they're the facts. So perhaps we need to look at some other aspects of the Matrix. There's certainly a few lines in it I didn't have time to remember or jot down that raised concerns about Neo. Rather strange name in many aspects. Is it light or is it dark? But Neo consumed the Smiths in the end. Does that make him light, or does that make him dark, or does that make him both? It kind of leaves the viewer hanging in midair in many aspects. But Neo's not a common name, is it? And perhaps it's another acronym. New Earth Order. Using the red pill. Something to ponder on. This came from a document where it was describing Earth people as being presently pretty messed up. That's which I think we can all agree to or agree upon. In fact, what was stated is that we are the most screwed up group of humans in the entire physical universe. And it's kind of why many spacecraft from other worlds have visited here to simply look around, observe the behaviour rather than interact. And it was suggested that the equivalent of psychologists and social workers have never seen such messed up people before, and this is why some come here to do research on it. Be nice if they came here and actually helped. But it was stated the inhabitants of planet Earth are legitimate human beings by definition. Some of them are fully developed, but most are not. And that's because of the interference. But they felt that this is a rectifiable situation, however, and it could change in very little time. And what it was suggested is that the human population are presently in an artificially created state of deep sleep due to propaganda. The sleepers. But what was also stated, which will please many, is that we are really ready for a planetary upgrade. They called it an N3 rating. Currently we're at N6. We've been blocked from going to 3. We've been at 3 for a long time. And one of the suggestions, it said, if the government changes its ways and gives them a fighting chance, they will be okay very quickly to transition from 6 to N3. Up to us to run the government. This is probably the final, well, it is the final piece before I have a music break, and then I'll run through some of the questions we've got. But one of the else that was mentioned about, of course, we've all heard about overpopulation, which is, putting it bluntly, is utter bollocks. In fact, the Earth is massively underpopulated. That won't please the Elites. But if you took everyone in the whole world and put them in the state of Texas, each person would have, each person, this is, not family, person would have 1,000 square foot of space. And the rest of the world would be empty. I'll repeat that again. You put everyone in the world in the state of Texas, each person would have about 1,000 square feet of space. So a family of 4 would have 4,000 square feet. When you consider most homes are between 9 and 1,500 square feet. Tells you all you need to know. Most people don't have 1,000 square feet of space reserved for themselves personally in their homes today. You may be lucky if you've got kids to have one room to yourself. But the myth of overpopulation is promoted by the elites only, as the world is overpopulated from their standpoint, not ours, and not the overview either. The reason is that the only purpose of people to them, other than themselves, is to do slave labour for them. But due to advances in technology, even though they've denied us some of the more interesting aspects of technology, there is now less of a demand for physical slaves today than in the past. Hence, there is an overpopulation of slaves, not overpopulation of people. And what they don't tell you is that the Earth, incidentally, produces enough food to feed 3 Earths in total per year. Three Earths from one planet. So where does all the food go, and why do so many people starve to death? Because of them, the faceless men. And those faceless men are getting their asses kicked big time now. And they are and will increasingly be exposed. The floodgates are open. When you get people like Alison Curry, who was threatened with life to not speak, starting to come forward. They'll give courage to others to come forward, and others to come forward, and others, and it's going to end up like a runaway train. Unfortunately for me, unless I get some funding, I'm going to struggle with doing just one show a week to keep up with the news. And it's going to go that way. You think it's heavy now? It's going to get a lot heavier. Most people think, oh, there's a lot of bad news. In essence, yeah. But the bad news is also the good news, because it's highlighting so much of the crimes that will remain hidden from all of us, from many of us anyway, for most of our lives. Now it's all coming out. It has to come out. And so it always can be perceived as not being nice and, oh, it's awful there and this, it's awful there and that. Yes, it is. But think of the victims. It's awful for them on a minute-by-minute basis. In essence, for those of us in the alternative media, these are exciting times. But it is not fun listening to some of the crimes. I think we all agree on that. But it just can't carry on with underground bunkers with kids being tortured and whatever else. It has to come out. Here's a song for Spark. Hi all, and welcome back to the final portion of tonight's show. I do believe one of the members gave me details that Jeff Merkley is Senator for Oregon, if I've read that correctly, if that was the correct answer. So, but either way, he took on the system, and the system told him to go and F himself. You don't have authority. Really. That shows you how much clout politicians really have. Right there and then that one story. And we're all demanding that politicians must do this and must do that. They can't do anything, even if they wanted to. And the other thing I neglected to mention, just because I said stop mentioning the red pill, don't be mentioning the blue pill either. The correct answer is no pills. And this applies in everyday life. All pills are poisons to the system. And I mean all. It's all about weakening our life force and trapping us in the spirit world. Psychedelic drugs install you in it. So why would we listen to a cabal movie telling us to take one pill over the other? No, we have our own choice. Neither. It's like the elections come November. Unless Trump's implemented the Sovereignty Act and arrested Clintons and others, why should we vote? Just vote for no one. problem solved then. We have to then install our own choices. If you have no government, then we have to create our own. In times of crisis, doesn't it say that in the Constitution? We can create our own government. We don't need their ink. Something to ponder on. Right, let's get into some Q&A. I received a rather long email. I'm not going to read it all out. They wanted giving me details of who they are and links with the Aldebaran group, and asked me to not give blanket statements and be unkind. Well, you asked me a question, I will answer the question based on my own knowledge. And the Aldebarans have not done this planet many favours. Whether there's some here now, as you're suggesting, to help, I hope that's the case. Like Cobra, he's here, or was, at the behest of the Alcyons, because of the damage they had done. And there's 6 groups that are, or were, helping here to clean up their portion of mess, remove technology that's not required, and fix things. So if you're part of that group as a representative of Aldebaran, then I'm glad that that group of people or beings chose to participate. But we can't ignore or brush under the carpet the crimes that previous elements of the Aldebaran group did with the Nazis. You just can't, you know. But if this is Aldebaran's way of apologising and you are part of that group to change things, then I, for one, am grateful. But you can't keep erasing history and because it affects your group. It's like the From Russia with Love series I've just done. We can't erase history like the elites have and expect things to change when everyone thinks that all Russians are communists, and clearly that was an installed program and it's nothing to do with Russians. And the same in China. We have to tell the story. And the same applies with the Draco. Their story's been told in more details. No one seems to go, well, you're being a bit rude or racist to the Draco. They've committed some heinous crimes here. And I'm still waiting for their ambassador to step forward and fulfill his role. But they were heavily involved in the Nazi program that involved a lot of heinous experiments on people. And I'm pleased that you and a few others who are here now as incarnates are trying to correct those ills. But please don't ask me to not say it as it is. Can't do that anymore. We just can't. I recently came across Scott Lemriel and the Who sound, H-U, and the Sayer race of aliens. I've never heard of them, but it's all names and names and more names. Is it Draco? Is it Anunnaki? Is it this? Is that? Lizards, snakes, you name it. So I'm not saying that they don't exist, I'm just not familiar with that name. Well, he says he makes it sound like the Hugh sound lifts us up to a higher plane. And Scott is really pushing us to use this Hugh sound. It sounds too good. This sounds too good. I have a big check on this. I need to know what you think. Well, I didn't get time to check up on it. But remember, Hugh means high, universal. Man. Hugh, man. Higher, universal man. So it may also be a trigger for us to remember who and what we are. Is it possible to share the information on what faction beings are involved in South Polynesia, Tahiti, Moorea, etc.? Rothschilds seem to, whichever faction is involved, it would probably go under the Asian faction, of which Rothschilds would like to remind people involved in all five so they win. How about all five turn on them and get rid of Rothschilds and we all get along together? Why would Trump not sign the trust papers under threat? He's got a number of guns pointing at his head, as I understand it. Possibly Melania also, given the coded message she sent out. Some are saying it's fake, it's not. There's a lot of background work going on. You know, we're seeing bits of it come out. In fact, we're seeing lots of it come out. But to get to that portion to come out, there's a vast amount of investigative work ongoing. It's not just one fraud or one county or one state or one country or one continent. This is linked globally, and it's everywhere. So that requires a lot of people to investigate, collate the information, and then decide how they're going to put it out in a system that works against those who want to put it out and against the people. It's like the trust itself. We no longer are waiting for government. If the governments want to come to us, fine. But we're not chasing them down anymore. The banks want to come to us, fine. But we're not chasing them down anymore. Military also, agencies also. Why? Because we'll wait forever for them people to either grow a set of balls and stand up, or come to a mutual decision. So now we just work around them, like the new system. We've spoken to all the governments, we've spoken to all the banks, we've spoken to the Rothschilds, we've spoken to the Koch brothers, one of which decided to quit this week, another one who's resigned, not only from business but politics. We've spoken to the Rand Corporation and Jared Rand, you name it. And we wait. But we're not waiting. Because as we discussed this, Kim and I, a long time ago, a couple of years ago, and I said to her, you do realise you're dealing with people who are followers, not leaders. They're not capable of leading. You can't make someone who's gone through their whole life being programmed to just follow orders and they just go along with it, no matter what it involves. To suddenly make common sense, rational, simple decisions and act like a leader for the people. Sadly, that has proven correct. And so we await that sovereignty agreement being rubber stamped. But a lot of it's to do with the threats that are ongoing. There's investigations going on everywhere on all levels, and it takes time. I know we all don't like that word, but there's a lot of people who are, their lives are under threat. We have to protect them. You see what happens if you become like a loose end to the Clinton corporation by like Kate Spade, like the hundreds of others. So Trump's under threat from the 5 factions and goons in the military sitting there with their dinars still waiting for the non-paying out RV. You know, perhaps certain more drastic measures could be done, and they have been discussed, including the next question you ask, is our economy going to collapse? Currently, no. It's been prevented a number of times, because that's what they want. They want to collapse America into oblivion and turn us into a third world country, including Europe as well, because all the wealth is going to Asia, or so they thought. But maybe a banking collapse, or a stock market collapse, or both, or a government shutdown for more than a few weeks, may be just what this country needs to get them to jump out of their slumber. See, for too many, as long as they're getting their social security checks and their pensions, doesn't matter, does it? It's not their problem. But it is our problem. And it is their problem also. And maybe if it goes on too long, maybe that will be a drastic measure that will need to be taken to get people to wake up and stand up and rout out the problem in our midst. Time will tell. They say Bitcoin will be our new money system. What can you tell us? They can try. It's up to the public to tell them to go and stick it, because that's another slavery system. Money itself is a slavery system. But the idea to me of the trust fund is we use the funds to educate, improve people's lives to a point where we don't need money ever again. Will it take time? Yeah. But I'm sure people would sooner earn money working towards a positive future, even if they're not around at the end when it's all completed, and carrying on in slavery jobs for minimum wage with no life value. Not anymore. I'm probably going to have to leave some of these. So is Gates doing all the vaccine destruction have to do with destroying Dravidia? I don't think so. He just wants rid of people. I think he's just completely sick. You know, they dropped some Microsoft machine in, to the ocean depths somewhere off Scotland this week. Should have been up to me, I would have tied Gates to it. Perhaps it was better that it wasn't. Have you heard of the Talpiot program? Yes, but I'm not too overly familiar with it. It's linked with the IDF, who spent their whole existence trying to copy the SAS. The SAS is on their badge. And then they also train our cops to be brutal. Same people. It's all part of a Zionist agenda. One hopes that the people rise up over there and the IDF put their guns down or keep hold of them, but not use them on people, but use them to defend the people, including Palestinians, of which they are far more related to than anybody else. I'm going to leave that. From the moment when the truth and secrets will be revealed to the public, will it also be a lot of people dying? Like you said, they can't handle the truth. I'd like to say no, but that would not be the truth. I think a lot of people will lose it. The AI machine supports 2.3 billion. Other people are given 60%. Maybe those 60% may not be real people. They appear real to us, but maybe they're not. Who knows? You know, we can only speculate, but I think the evidence mounts to a lot of people certainly mentally losing it, of which they may not recover. I don't think there's enough of us to support the volume. Maybe there's not enough of us, enough people, real people, to support anyway. It all depends, you know, if this synthetic or the synths is correct, and it's roughly 85%, or even 75%. And there's only 15% organic, 15 to 30 organic humans. Do I think many of those will die? Not really. One thing that, you know, this is why we do the a lot of the psychological stuff at the show, because psychologically it's been difficult for us all. We've been cast aside, called nutty, and all kinds of other things. How are the people who are close to you going to handle that when it comes out? That they cast a family member or a loved one, married or not, aside because they thought they were nutty, exposing things that are now all out in the public. They're not conspiracy anymore, are they? It's fact. And they've lived a lie. How are they going to handle it? Well, that's up to them. They've all had the opportunity. And sometimes I can be a bit harsh, but they've been harsh on us. Let's not forget that. They've been badly harsh on us, stepping out. That doesn't mean to say that we have to cast them aside, because we won't. We can try and help them, but I feel their pain and trauma will be too much to handle. Something else I hope that I'm wrong on. In regards to the Russia information destruction of one of the 3 moons that created the flood, is this the same story as Tiamat? No. That was further out. Some suggest Midgard Earth is a fragment of Tiamat, but the text seems to suggest differently. yeah, it was not Tiamat. Also, how do the Titans and Giants fit into the scheme of existence? Well, they were here before us, some of the Giants. Well, some of the parents are giants, depends on which way you look at it. We're the smallest. It's been like a reduction in size. Everything's been reduced on this planet. The trees, the only thing that has increased was the water. And poisons at that, being salt water. Did the giants before Neanderthal? Similar times, and yes, before. During the Star Wars, it depends which one. There's been many. There's the one with Atlantis 13,027 years ago, and there was the one 110,000 years ago, and there was also a lot of fun and games that went on here. The 14, 15, 16, 17 and 1800s, including nuclear war or nuclear weapons dropped in Russia around 1812. When Russia, funny enough, came to America's aid during that time, in the Civil War. Many historians won't tell you that, will he? Doesn't fit into the narrative. Twice Russia has come to America's aid in wars here against the Brits. And the Spanish and the French and the Dutch. In case people think it's all about Britain, it's not. They were all involved. It's the story of the Iran Queen. True, I'm not too sure what that is referencing. Sorry. Banking, I think we've covered enough of that. We'll go on to that next week. No new information about the percentage of organic souls and the Matrix extras. Unsure of what this nonsense with Nutty Arsehole and Macron, the French Prime Minister or President, clasping a glowing globe/orb. Yes, I remember Trump and the Saudi King doing the same last year, but up to now I don't know what it all entails. Perhaps they just like holding on to each other's balls, maybe. I don't know. And I'm going to go back to finish to one of the questions from earlier about the trust papers and collapse in the economy and Bitcoin. And the last question there, is there really no God? Oh, you could probably spend the whole show on this, but I think I've made my position quite clear. The definition of God as is known by most people on this planet is not what you think it is. The ancient definition was higher evolved being. That doesn't mean to say that everyone that's higher evolved is from another planet, or a god for that matter. We have higher evolved beings on this planet. Does that make them all gods? Think about it. Now, all of the religions appear to have different gods. So how many are there? So when people say, well, my God's better than your God, and let's go and fight over it, why doesn't the God come down and stop it? It's supposed to be all-seeing, sitting there up in a cloud passing judgments on everyone. He sees everyone and everything. Well, why is he not seeing the children in bunkers being tortured? This is the question. These are the type of the questions that need to be asked. They tell you in the book that the Lord is God. This is the same Lord that came down and changed the people's language so they wouldn't communicate together and become a threat. Is that the type of God you want? The Lord? Oh, I know who the Lord is. It's Anu, the Lizard King, the Draco. Is that who we should be worshipping? Should we be worshipping a so-called God that's ignored what's gone on this planet for thousands of years? These are all valid questions. God gave you free will. What, to commit heinous crimes against children? War after war in his or her name, depending on which religion you believe in. The real definition of God is there's a source creator. It's not a he, it's not a she. Does it speak? No. That source created everything. All matter, all living beings. That means you are part of it. What does a being do that goes on and evolves through the higher planes? So you go through the 7 earth planes, the 7 cosmic planes, and the 7 universe planes. You become the source for another creation of the universe. So you have the God spark in you. So why are you giving your God spark away, or source spark away? To someone you don't have any idea who or what it is. Because if it's connected to the religious books, most of it's to do with the Draco and the Anunnaki. The God spark's inside of you. So when you say God, if you want to use that term, I would say source. God is coming to save us. It's a play on words, because you're the God, so you have to save you. Everyone has the potential to become a higher source being. There are some here now on this planet with some of the highest source codes ever. Are they gods? No. Same as you. They get cut, they bleed. Do they want worshipping? No. You keep giving your energy away, your life force away. You end up at the end of life with no life force left to move on to a higher plane. That is what the gist of what's gone on here. We kept giving our life force away. I'm going to pray to God. When you're praying to the spirit realm, the demons. I'm sorry. All this will come out eventually. So, to answer your question, is there no God? There's billions of them. And you're one. But don't elevate yourself above anybody else. No one's more important than anybody else. How can all life be part of a source spark? Be more special than anybody else? Think about it. So you have the ability to become the God, which is a higher evolved being. It means you've learnt your life lessons, personal life lessons, and developed on the mental planes and beyond. Isn't that what we should all be hoping to attain? But if you keep giving your life force away, you won't have nothing left to go forward with. That is what they've done with religion and all these gods as the general public know. The God's within. It's you. On that note, we're going to end this week's show. And a lot to take in as per usual. Some things to ponder. Please stop saying the red pill. It's another one of their agency game tricks. And I want people to go away from this show with the knowledge that the bigger picture, which is far more important than the theatre that we watch on our TV and the political realms, on the bigger picture, humanity's winning, and winning heavily. This has been the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams. Bye for now.